It is, I believe, for me, at the core of my entire purpose for being on this earth at this lifetime is to help other people grow and achieve freedom. I truly believe that that is my entire destiny. Every single life that I get to touch, every single person that leaves me an amazing comment on my YouTube channel or DMs me and says, I watched your YouTube videos for a year and set up my business. And I just got my first client, or I made my first $5,000 to pay for my kids' college because of the advice that you gave me. And, those just remind me to keep going, because my dream is to touch 1 million people's lives in that way. Even if it's a nugget of something that I've given or said or helped them with that has transformed their thought or helped them get to that next step, to just get to that place of breathing. That's really what motivates me.
Welcome to Do Small Business Like a Big Boss, where we explore the real stories, hard-earned lessons, and game-changing strategies of entrepreneurs who've moved beyond the side hustle and built businesses that scale with confidence. This show is proudly sponsored by Project Icon. I'm your host, Aisha Jorge Massengill, your small business legal guide. Let's dive in. Welcome to Do Small Business Like a Big Boss, the podcast dedicated to uncovering the resilience, discipline, and strategies behind thriving small businesses. I'm your host, Aisha, your small business legal guide. And each week we sit down with entrepreneurs who've built from the ground up, sharing real stories about their challenges, victories, and the lessons that have transformed their journey. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Cheryl C. Perez, President and CEO of CCP Enterprises and the founder of Cheryl C. Perez Brands. Over the past 25 years, Cheryl has built and sold multiple 6- and 7-figure companies, and she's made it her mission to help entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders build the operational, sales, service, and HR structures that they need to scale with confidence. She's also the host of CPTV, a weekly YouTube show where she provides free step-by-step process training for anyone ready to systematize their organization. Welcome, Cheryl.
Hey, Aisha, how are you? I'm so excited to be here with you.
I am fantastic. Thanks for asking. I really appreciate you agreeing to come and sit down with me for a little bit. It just was interesting in my researching you on all the socials and everything that you have some value, I think, that our listeners and viewers would really find fascinating and helpful. So I wanted to just start with your origin story and your foundation. Can you take us back to the beginning? Because you've built and sold so many companies over the past 25 years. What inspired you to take that very first entrepreneurial step?
Ooh, well, thank you for having me first. And I am excited to be here with you and thinking through that question. What inspired me? I would probably say hitting a ceiling as I was climbing the corporate ladder. You know, you're told when you're growing up that you are supposed to do all the things, right? You're supposed to go to college, you're supposed to go to graduate school, you're supposed to, get that corporate job and like climb this ladder. And as I was embarking upon that journey, because I did all the things, I hit a ceiling that I felt was really low. And it had already kind of been blooming in me. I mean, entrepreneurship has been something that, thinking back, now that I really truly understand what entrepreneurship is, I was always having some kind of entrepreneurial thing going on, even back to 7th grade. I used to sell now laters on the playground at my school when everybody else would be playing. I'd, go to this candy shop that was at the corner of my street, and it was like an old school candy store. It was called Candyland. It's not there anymore. It's okay. And they would sell all the old school penny candy, right? And so at the time, now laters, the real ones, the old school ones, the ones, not the chewy ones that we get today, the real ones.
The one that take your
They were,
molars out.
yes, those the real ones. And that's my favorite candy. So I used to buy them for 10 cents a pack and then resell them for 25 cents a pack on the playground. And that was because my mom was a single mom. She was an LPN, so she was like, now when I think back to finding out what she actually made, I was like, I don't even know how she did it, but I hated asking her for money. So I would be like, this
Mm.
can be, my money for pizza and, for stuff. So I do that at least 3 times a week at school. And I'd win now and later packs for, like he had like a rewards program. If you bought a pack, he would stick little pieces of paper in there and say you could win a certain number of packs. And I would win 50 packs. So that was my first
Mm.
entrepreneurial thing, but I didn't really know that's what it was. And even through, high school, I was always trying to monetize something. In college, I had a really rigorous schedule because I finished my undergraduate degree in 3 years and I did my graduate degree in one. And I didn't really have time for a job. So I sold dinners, I did hair, I did nails. I mean, anything in order to be able to make money. So entrepreneurship has always been kind of in my DNA, but I was too afraid to actually think of it that way. It was always just something extra to do to make some extra money. And it stuck with me. I always did something on the side to kind of hit a financial goal or to achieve something. I was saving for my first house. I did consulting work on the side, and I didn't really think of it as a go into business for yourself type of a thing until I realized that I was working in these environments where my skills and talents were really, really, really beneficial to those that I was working for, but there was no reciprocity in the relationship. Let's just put it that way. It was kind of like on the verge of what I would probably term as an abusive relationship. Almost like, nope, you do what we say, you do as we say.
Mm.
When we say do it, we're gonna get every hour, every drop of intellectual property we can out of you. And then when you come and say, hey, can I get a raise or can I get that promotion? We're gonna say, well, we're evaluating things, or that's not in the game plan, or absolutely, here's a new title, here's all the new responsibilities, but here's no more money. And I
Mm.
think that my final straw, I was really contemplating, and I had a game plan. I had a transition plan is what I call it today, and I actually give it to a lot of my students. I had this huge plan, like to extricate myself from that relationship 18 months later than I did. So I had already been made up my mind, but I was afraid to take the leap. And then I went into my boss's at the time's office for a big review. Had one of the most amazing years in the company history. It actually been named the number 3 salesperson in the country because I worked for a large international organization. And he said, yeah, no, you did an amazing job. Your numbers are off the charts. So we're going to give you, we have a freeze right now. We can't do a raise, but we're going to take 1/4% from 3 other people and give you a 3.25% raise instead of everybody else's 2. And I said, okay. I said, well, how about this? You keep your raise and your benefits, and you just give me a percentage of what I sell, and we'll call it even. And he said, that wouldn't be fiscally responsible for us. And so I decided that it was no longer fiscally responsible for me to stay in that relationship. I turned in my letter
Mm.
of resignation 3 days later,
Oh,
and
wow.
and I was done. I was done, and but I had already started working on my game plan, so I wasn't jumping off the bridge. I was just kind of hanging from the side of the bridge at that
Well,
point.
let's talk about that. What were the preparations that you were doing behind the scenes to begin that preparation process?
I think the first thing that I did was really get my mindset together. I did a lot of work around spending time really trying to understand what it was going to mean, right? What was going to feel different about it, and I had to work through a lot of fear and imposter syndrome things that were, going on in my mind. And I think that that was due to lack of clarity, really, surrounding the business that I really wanted to do. Because, I had a lot of different skills and talents and a lot of stuff that I could do. And I wasn't 100% sure if just transitioning into what I had been doing in corporate was exactly what I wanted to do in my own business. And so the first step was really getting clarity so that I could build that confidence to kind of overcome that imposter syndrome. And so really mapping out the business model, the idea behind the business, figuring out where my passion and skills kind of intersected, and then diving more deeply into the work around if that was something I could sell, like if that was something that people would actually buy, because it goes beyond just, thinking that there's a problem out there and really knowing that there is one and doing your market research. And so that first piece that I had finished was my market research, niching, determining what area, what niche I wanted to do, determining kind of what services, ideas around, products or services that I could sell, and getting an idea of what the market looked like was my first step. And as I continued to do that work, which took me a lot longer than it should have. Now, when I teach people how to do it, it's much, much quicker, but it took me a lot longer than it should have. And once I did that, I had a lot more clarity, which built the confidence. And I think that had I not already started trying to implement that transition plan, I probably wouldn't have quit 3 days later. I would have probably stayed in that, abusive relationship. It was just slowly getting things. So I officially registered my LLC, started making sure that I was keeping track of contacts that I made were in the past. Those would have been like the organization I was working for's contacts. They would have just gone into the organizational database and, CRM. And so I began to make sure that got my mind wrapped around, no, I'm going to be doing this, so I need to make sure that these connections are relevant to my future as well. And so those were some of the things. I mentally made that shift and knew that it was coming, so I began functioning and gaining clarity around what that looked like. And then the third thing I did was really get a better understanding and idea of my own financial breaking points, understanding, because that was a part of the confidence, right? What can I tolerate? What do I really need to make? What do I really need to sell? How much do I need to sell in order to be able to, continue to provide for my family? So those were the first few steps. Now, in the 9 to 5 transition planner that I now have for my students, it's complete now with all the things that I didn't finish before I took that leap. But I did kind of finish it after I took the leap. I was just already transitioned, so it really wasn't the same. But then it just came down to really finding out what I needed to do in order to really create a sound business structure so that I could do it successfully. And I was guessing. I was totally guessing.
I want to go back to the idea of gaining clarity, right? Because
Mhm.
in my experience, everyone feels a nudge, right? When you are contemplating a move such as this, it may start as a nudge or it may start as a sledgehammer. But you talked about the idea of getting clarity. What are some of the steps that you take to get that clarity? I mean, I think you talked about some of them, but I want to make sure that we're crystallizing it for the listeners. What
Yeah.
were some of the steps that you took to gain clarity about this is what I need, this is what's not working, and this is what I want for myself?
So am I thinking about it as 25 year ago Cheryl or today Cheryl?
It's 20, let's start 25 years ago.
Okay, all right. 25
Because now
year
we
ago.
fine-tuned it and
Yes,
refined
I've
it and
totally fine-tuned it,
crystallized
right?
it.
Yes.
And my
25
folks are
years.
your 25-year-old person.
Okay, okay. 25 year ago, Cheryl had no idea what that meant. So I had no idea what clarity I needed. I could just feel intuitively that whatever I was looking through, determining, I'm naturally an operations person. I'm naturally a strategies person. So I knew that I needed to create a strategy around what this business is going to look like. And so it involved a ton of research. And this was really before social media. This was before like YouTube University was even a thing. This was really before there was like a Google where you could just go and Google it. The internet was around, but it wasn't like the number one resource or tool for research. So I spent a lot of time reading books. Um, you know, uh, going to the library, just watching and learning other people that I worked with and that I knew was like a thing. I just was gathering data and information around their experiences. And just really, truly for me, having a crystal clear picture around what I felt confident, what felt like I had enough clarity to move. And I thought that what I was feeling was good enough at the time. I just knew that if I feel comfortable, then that means I can move to the next step. If I have enough of an understanding of what I'm finding, then I think I can move to the next step. So, back then it was just around that feeling. Does this feel good enough to be able to pull this off? And in my work, in my side hustle work that I had been doing before, in the beginning of my career, I worked in a role that allowed me to help nonprofit organizations all over the world start from the ground up. So I had a little bit of a better understanding and knowledge of what it meant to create something from scratch, to create an organization from scratch. But it was definitely different when you are doing it for other people, when you're doing it for yourself. You know what I mean? It's a totally different vibe because I felt confident in helping other people kind of do it. I'm like, no, this is what we need to do. Let's just go. And talking them off the ledges. But I couldn't talk myself off of all the ledges. So the clarity then was really around just feeling comfortable with each step. Is this the, and I probably went through all the steps thinking back in wrong order. I totally did, which meant I had to go back and do things over again. And I would do something. Initially, the first thing was I need a name. Like that's the very first thing. I need a name. Well, the name should really be tied to what you're going to do and who you're trying to attract and what's available. And this was all before the internet. So I knew that was a piece. I knew registering it legally was a piece. I knew getting a tax ID was a piece. I knew setting up a financial structure was a piece because I had done that, before in my jobs. But really, truly, I think that the missing piece was understanding what it really would take to market it and sell it. And I was a salesperson. So, but understanding, just because I felt like I knew who I wanted to work with and the type of audience I wanted to work with and who, I thought would buy the services, really getting clarity around who those people were and what they were looking for was, I think, the missing piece. So that was 25 years ago, Cheryl, clarity. Today,
So,
clarity, Cheryl, is a totally different clarity.
yeah, today is, you mentioned a couple of things that I want to rewind because I heard you say you were doing these things in the background, but at the same time, you had gone to your present company and said, hey, if you're not going to give me the raise, can I take on this different kind of structure and still work for you all? Right? So, was it your intention, even as you started that company, to do both, to have something as the side hustle and do both? And when did that change?
My intention originally with my transition plan was to build my revenue in my side hustle to a level that I felt I could take the complete plunge and walk away. So that was my original intention. And that was where the 18-month plan came into play. Right? Because I also had like some debt I wanted to get rid of. I still had some stuff I wanted to get done in my house that I wanted to still do. And I'm like, nope, I can really, because I can manage my time well to take on more side hustle clients, more side hustle work, perfect that and formalize that work into this business structure that I'm creating. And then, use those relationships to just build upon them and continue to grow to the point where I can just kind of walk in here and say, look, I'm good, because I had done other things on the side before where it did come really close to like the income had come really close to like my regular job income. And I was doing one job that my husband at one point said, you're going to have to decide which one you're doing. Cause I was doing like in-house parties for women and sex toys and things like that. And I was making like almost equal money doing that. So I was at
Wow.
the job that I was at that point. And he was like, we're gonna have to decide what we're doing because you are working all day long and then every evening and all weekend long you are coaching women, and then it was, I had I had a phone that they would call, and I would be at where I was just juggling a lot. So I had done that before, but still didn't have the confidence that I could really do it, on
Hmm.
my own, that I could really do it. That was more like a
Yeah.
Mary Kay vibe type of a thing. So everything was given to me. It was just Mary Kay with different products, but everything was given to me at that point. So
Yeah.
I still knew that I had to figure all of that out before I could actually, do it on my own. So my intention was to do it as a side hustle until I was 100% sure and then leave. But that's not what I did.
And there is an element, almost a safety net, right? When you work for someone else, you don't bear the risk. If something goes wrong, if the business cycles up, the business cycles down, that risk is typically borne by the company. And when you are on your own, you realize the magnitude of it rests with you.
Yes.
Did you have
Yes,
that
there's
kind of
no other
moment?
department.
Yeah, there's no.
All the time. There's no other departments, right? I mean, even in my job, I only had to do my job, and then if somebody else needed to touch it, I could just send an email message to them or whatever and say, "It's your turn, take it over." And when you are your own boss, you are all the departments. There is
Hmm.
no one else to forward it to, unless you hire to that, right?
Right,
So
right.
it's a very big difference, right? Because if it works, if it doesn't work, it's on you. And I think that one of the big things that I would do differently looking back is, I think that I stayed in the if it doesn't work too often and too long. Instead of focusing on the if it does work, because the reality is you can't fail. You
Yeah.
can't fail unless you give up. You just can't, right? Every
Yeah, you just
mistake or every
learn.
little tinge is a learning lesson. It's an
Hmm.
amazing learning lesson that as long as you are a person that can learn from those things and you take those in and then make the shift and the tweak that you need to make in order to move forward. If you're a person that never learns anything and doesn't take responsibility for anything or doesn't, look at things and say, wow, what did I learn from this? I messed up, then that don't apply. But if you are, you can't fail. And I think that I spent a lot of time worried about if it didn't work instead of believing in my heart and soul in order to manifest that it was going to work.
Hmm.
And then as it started working, I got a little bit better at well, if it's going to work, but in the
Hmm.
beginning, Lord, I stayed in that other space for way too long. And that's that mindset piece, I think, that
Yeah. And I,
is
I will
important.
say there are people who always talk about mindset, and I used to think it was like voodoo hokey stuff, but it really is
Woo woo.
critical when yeah, it's like the woo woo. It is really critical on the entrepreneurial journey to address mindset. I have a son who is an aspiring hip hop artist, and
I do
there are a
too.
lot of yeah, and there are a lot of people who are like, it's not going to work. And I will always say, what if it does? And
Hmm.
my vision is not his vision. And what if it does? And I apply that to myself. And I've taken, I think, DISC and some other like personality tests where they tell me like I'm the dreamer. And
Hmm.
even though I have like a very structured kind of conservative gig, I let my mind dream. What if it does
Hmm.
work out instead of being locked into what if it doesn't? And I just think that that's really important for people to appreciate. Like, you don't lose, you learn. And it's like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, as they say.
Absolutely.
You have to shoot your shot in this journey. So,
Amen.
all right. So you got to the point. You had your 18-month plan that seemed like it got cut short because you'd had enough. They were not going to acquiesce
I
to
was fed
your
up. Yes.
yeah, they were not going to acquiesce to your requests. So that was kind of your tipping point. And so tell me about what happened next.
Oh, then I jumped. I jumped, and I did have still some clients that were in my side hustle thing. And so I was all in on them and I was doing the thing. I didn't keep marketing. I didn't know to do that. And then when those clients' work was done, I was sitting around like,
Where they at?
where are the rest of the clients? Like, where they at? And I had to, for the first time ever, really sit down and come up with a marketing strategy that I had never really had to do on that level before, right? I mean, in theory, I had done it for in my previous work, helping organizations start from scratch, right? But to actually execute and implement it, to see if it works or not, it was like brand new, a brand new journey for me. And I was just in the thick of all of it, and I thought there were several times where I thought I had young children. There were several times where I thought, "Oh God, girl, what in
Mm.
the heck did you do?" But I knew I could sell. And I knew that I said, the fact that I had the other gig and was in this peaceful state that it was a side gig made me let go of all the pressure, right? And so I had to release the pressure. And once I
Mm.
released the pressure of having to sell, having to do it, all of that same creativity, all of that same intellectual property that I'd used so many times before came back. And then I realized, no, this business has to be set up in a way that it is around strategies, structures, systems, processes in order for me to be able to make this flow. And I just began doing what I had been doing for so many other people for so many years. I finally said, you're not going to just keep giving this away to others to benefit
Mm.
from. I need you to take a
Hmm.
deep breath, quit freaking out, because I was
Yep.
freaking out. Quit freaking out and do the same thing for yourself. And I did. And slowly but surely, clients came, and I got a nice rhythm, and I established a lead generation rhythm. And, then just started taking people through my processes. And I looked up about a year afterwards, and there were definitely ups and downs. There were definitely seriously late nights. There were definitely wins and losses. There were definitely a lot of no's in there, but there were a lot of yeses as well.
Hmm.
And I looked up one day and said to my husband, I need to hire somebody. Like, I
Mm.
am too busy. I need to hire somebody. And he was in education at the time, so it was like summer break. And he was like, well, I can help. What do you need me to do? And I'm like, I need you to be my customer service person, because I was still on the sales side, the new business development side, so much that I didn't have anybody on the other side taking care
Mm.
of the
Fulfill.
customers and clients and responding time, response times and all of those things for the projects that I had that were actually in progress. And from our kitchen table, he sat there and kind of became my customer service rep. And at that point, it was like, oh my God. And I realized at that time, I was lucky because I didn't have to pay him, obviously, because he was my husband. But I realized this is how people grow. Like, okay, because I had more
Mm.
time and less stress, so I could be in that complete clarity zone of moving forward and growing, because I had some stuff off of my plate. And that's when I said, all right, next year, I know he's got to go back to work eventually, so I won't have it, but I'm going to have to make sure that I take this plunge and hire somebody to replace him, because I can't go back. And
Yeah.
so I did. When he went back to work, I hired my first account manager for my clients. And I was freed up to sell even more and do even more. And that's when I realized the final S in the freedom framework, which is squads, growing and building your team.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, you dropped a couple of important gems there that I wanted to turn back to. One is just we obviously need customers, right? Clients, customers, whatever your space is. But there is a part of the process of not giving off the air of desperation when you are trying to pursue those clients, which I think is very important. And then, what you just talked about, the importance of growing a team. So Gerber talks about the idea of working on your business versus working in your business. And I think having a team really helps you do that. What are other things that newer entrepreneurs should look for to appreciate when it might be time to add to their team?
That's a great question. I mean, and just I want to loop back to what you said, working on your business, right? And working in it. The two things in order to be able to work on your business means that you do have to have support, right? You have to
Mm-hmm.
have team support. You also have to have time. And those are both things that you have to purposefully create. So a lot of times I think entrepreneurs get it wrong when they think, well, when I have time, I will work on my business. And that time will never just appear. You have to prioritize it, because if not, then the business will get away from you. You'll be in it so much that you'll look up and you can't go any further, right? You don't have the capacity to go any further. So you have to make the time and make the team. The thing that I would say was the trigger for me, and what I recommend to a lot of my students, is it's time when you are at capacity from a new client development perspective, meaning new clients. You can't take on any new clients, or you can't service the clients that you have. When your capacity begins to limit your revenue and retention, it's time. And even if you think you can't afford it, it's time, because you'll never get over that hump. When you can, when I've had, coaches, consultants, in program service providers that I work with, and they're like, I just can't take on, I had to turn a client down.
Ooh.
Or I had to, say no, or I had to not go after that opportunity. When you start to feel that, that's a real sign. Or when clients are leaving you, right? When they're complaining, when you're dealing with a lot of stupid customer service stuff, when you probably don't even have your customer service processes in place, but you definitely need some support over there. Because if you're always in client delivery and creation, or in client attraction, or in acquiring clients and customers, and you can't take care of the ones that you have and be responsive and treat them the way that you expect to be treated as a customer, that's the other true sign. That's when you know. That's when you really know.
So going along those same lines, what's one big business system that you've implemented, because you're like the queen of process and systems, that you think most small entrepreneurs or small business owners overlook when they're starting out?
Lead generation process. Lead generation process, a lead generation system, a marketing system. I think that that's something that people, and because they're not like the cheapest systems, right? They're not like, the good ones are not the cheapest systems. And I think that people are like, no, it's okay. I'm just going to network my way there, or I'm going to refer my way there. And the reality is, when you are only focusing your marketing strategy in one area, and your bucket, every lead is in that one bucket, you'll experience the ebbs and flows. But when you have a diversified marketing strategy and stream in place, then your business will be consistent and go up. So the number one system, I would definitely say, aside from, obviously, I hope the basic operating ones, like email, a communication system is kind of basic, but I may have skipped over that. Maybe it's not basic for everybody. You got to have email. You got to have phone. Let's just go back there. You got to have, file management. You got to have that. So that's like a given, right? That's a part of your basic operational structure. But the overlooked one, I think, is the critical need for a marketing system, a go high level system, that you can automate as much of that lead nurture, sales sequence, sales process, that you can do all of that with, because you can't spend all your time there and have success. You have to still work it in order to convert and to have sales, but it needs to be as automated as possible. And I think that that's the one system that you 100% have to know when you're creating your business budget, when you're just getting started, needs to be included.
Yeah. So pivoting a little bit, one of the themes of this show is having the resilience as required as an entrepreneur, small business owner, to navigate various storms and trials and tribulations that you have to get through. Over your time in 25 years, you've had, I'm sure, had to deal with some doozies. So what do you tap into to allow you to get through those challenging times?
In 25 years, what I tap into has grown so significantly. And honestly, as you are in it longer and you grow and you get bigger, I feel like the ups and downs are bigger. The downs are bigger, right? Because they have that much more impact, and you have that much more pressure. Like today, if I give up, my giving up doesn't just affect me, it affects my team's families and lives. Like now, it's a lot more pressure. Like for it's like, now I know, I mean, I'm talking about, I may have 9 people on my team, but those people have wives and children. So now I'm,
Mm-hmm.
exponentially responsible for everybody. And so the pressure is that much higher. And when I do experience a down, now it has to be um, a proactive process. So before it was reactive. I'd wait for something to happen and then try to get myself and pull myself out of it. Now I have practices in place that proactively keep me from getting there. And
Mm.
that's really the only thing that I can say that has changed in what I really do now. And that includes a very strict, morning routine that includes meditation. It includes releasing stress. It includes boundaries around what I let enter my mental space before I'm all the way psychologically ready for the day. So, little things that I do, like my phone automatic, and sometimes it's annoying because I really do need to get the notifications, but my phone goes into do not talk to me at 10 o'clock at
Mm-hmm.
night and it stays there until 8 a.m. And some people say, well, mine
Mm.
turns off at 6. Well, mine turns off at 8 because at 6:30 I'm getting up and I'm doing my morning routine and I don't want anything to
Right.
interrupt that. So I don't turn over and grab my phone and go right into anything. I turn over and I turn on my meditative music and I slowly allow myself. Actually, my Google Home wakes me up, and my alarm, after my alarm, it's automatically set to like begin nature sounds, and it begins nature sounds and like like meditation music. So I'm like, if it's like that scene in Coming to America. I don't know if I'm aging myself, but that scene when Hakeem gets up in the morning and like they're getting ready to give him his bath. It's his birthday, and they start the violins, start to like, and
Yes,
then
and he gets the royal bathers.
that's the vibe that takes place in my morning. Like the violins start, and then I'm like, good morning. Like I
Ah,
turn to my dogs and I'm like, good morning. And then I go right into pulling out my journal and trying to remember, I try to focus on my dreams and any kind of like downloads and stuff I had while I was sleeping.
mm.
Downloads from God is what I always say. And I go right into meditation, a minimum of 30 minutes of meditation, deep breathing. And then, I turn on my favorite podcast or my favorite positive get yourself together affirmations or anything like that, music that's going to get me in a good space, and then I
Mm-hmm.
proceed to get dressed. And then right around that time my do not disturb comes off, and by the time I get back to my phone, all the notifications are in there and the emails and all that stuff. But I have a very strict rule around that, and that is a boundary that's set. My calendar is blocked. You can't schedule appointments that early. You just can't, because I can't deal with what the day might how life might be lifing that day if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
proactively approaching it. And I
Yeah.
found that by doing that, and I have an amazing meditation practice from a book. It's the 6 step meditation. It includes love and compassion, gratitude, forgiveness, daily intent, life vision, and then also blessings. And just finishing my meditation with a real good talk with God and a hug, honestly, from God.
Mm.
Maybe I literally visualize hugging him, her, or
I love
whatever
it.
he or she is to you. But that hug at the end of my meditation of that light and that energy lets me know that I'm protected and that he's always got my back. So when things happen, I'm always like, I can get a crazy looking email and be like, that is so fun. That's so interesting. Like,
That's
oh my
cute. Isn't
goodness.
that
Like,
cute?
it's not even that serious. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's cute.
So it really does. Instead of me being like, and going, my central nervous system, it immediately locking up, mine, very much so doesn't lock up anymore. It just
All right,
doesn't.
I got a couple more questions and we're gonna get you out of here.
Okay.
After building and selling multiple companies, what keeps you motivated to help others do the same?
It is, I believe, for me, at the core of my entire purpose for being on this earth at this lifetime, is to help other people grow and achieve freedom. I truly
Mm.
believe that that is my entire destiny. And to help people transform their lives. And that's what motivates me. every single life that I get to touch, every single person that leaves me an amazing comment on my YouTube channel or DMs me and says, I watched your YouTube videos for a year and set up my business,
Mm.
or and I just got my first client, or I made my first $5,000 to pay, for my kids' college because of the advice that you gave me. And those just remind me to keep going, because my dream is to touch a million people's lives in that way. Even if it's a nugget of something that I've given or said or helped them with that has transformed their thought or helped them get to that next step, to just get to that place of breathing, you know,
Mm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
that's really what motivates me. It's helping to change the world. I don't know how else to say it. I want to
That's
change the world.
small, tiny little goal. Small, tiny little goal.
I want
Uh,
everybody to be able to get up and have a leisurely morning. I want everybody to be able to jump on an airplane when they want to and go take a vacation. I want everybody to be able to care for a loved one who's sick or hurt and not have to worry about somebody telling them that they can't take time off. Like, that in
mm,
itself is crazy. And I want everybody to be able to share that with their own legacy and their own children and say, you can live a life of freedom and be financially stable and free and, do everything that your heart desires.
all right. This is the last question.
Okay.
When you hear the phrase "do small business like a big boss," what does that mean to you?
There's no other way. there's not even another option. I mean, when I
Mm-hmm.
say do small business, when I hear that, I think don't half-ass it, don't take shortcuts, set your business up like the 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure business that you imagine it's going to
Mm.
be from the beginning. Go above and beyond in your structure. Don't be like, oh, only. I've had clients literally, coachees tell me, well, I don't really need that right now. That's for big businesses. And I'm like, oh, so that's not what you want to be, because you're in the wrong
Mm-hmm.
coaching program, or you have the wrong coach. You just heard the vision. My visions are
Mm-hmm.
definitely not small. And so I only want to coach people who have big dreams. And so if someone tells me, oh, that's for big business, that process is for big business, or, creating that type of structure is for big business, I'm just going to, do it over here. And I'm like, well, we're definitely not compatible in that sense. So when you do small business like a big boss, we're not. I'm thinking you're doing small business like a big boss. That's exactly. There's no other way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're just playing with a little bit of a hobby there, and
Yes.
it's just your little side hustle, and that's okay too. That's okay too. But me and you probably wouldn't be working together. I don't have any coaches that say, I just want to have a side hustle. I'm like, well, I have a
Right.
whole bunch of other people in my network that work with people who want to maximize their side hustles, not me.
Right. Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
Amazing. Where can the people find you if they want to find you out there in the world?
Oh, I'm on all social at Cheryl C. Perez. YouTube is probably the first stop for most folks. CPTV or Cheryl C. Perez. They can find me there. But I'm on all of it: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, I think Pinterest too, maybe. Cheryl C. Perez. And at my website, of course, CherylCPerez.com.
Amazing. Thank you so very much for your time and your talents. Appreciate the generosity. And for the listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you download and subscribe. I would be very appreciative to help grow and expand the reach of this podcast. Thank you all, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.